Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good day wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the next episode of No Dice, No Glory. Sponsored by our jobs that actually pay us money, we're coming to you not at all live from an abandoned arms factory deep under a mountain in West Virginia. We are proud to proffer to you the finest in wargaming coverage. Without any further ado, let's get this show on the road.
Well, thanks, Sean. That was, as always, a lovely intro. I am Austin Copedy, and I am here with Ian Birdwell, who you all may know as a writer on No Dice Nor Glory. He has been lovely enough to sit in for Ed, who is dealing with a pregnancy of twins at the moment. So Ian will be filling in for a lovely episode of Tactics Talk. Ian, how are you doing today?
I'm getting by. It's been a lovely afternoon here in sunny Norfolk, Virginia, and I've just been enjoying the fact that it's not raining for like the fifth day in a row.
This is true. We've had several flash flood style rains here, so nothing like other parts of the country. But rain is always rain. But it gives us a lot of time to sit, deal with our models, get stuff painted up. Are you working on anything in particular?
Right now, I'm finishing up my East Germans for a tournament that's being held this Saturday, June 15th, at Atlantis Games and Comics in Norfolk, Virginia. So that's what I've been working on.
Oh, good lord! I don't have to teach you anything. You're already plugging tournaments. Well, today we are actually going to talk about a brand new book for a brand new version of our brand new late war game. And I think that's the most times I've said the word brand new in a sentence. For everyone that doesn't know, Fortress Europe has come out, and it's now been out for a week or two. We've had our chance to go over it. I have some tactical suggestions for you. Ian's going to fill you in with what he thinks, and hopefully this can help you win games, help you tactic better, and in general, just be better at life. So to lead us off, what better way to be better at life, Ian, than with a corny joke? Are you ready for this?
I'm not sure.
I hope so, because here it comes. Why couldn't the bicycle stand up by itself?
I don't know why.
It was too tired. So,
If there's one thing I can't stand, it's puns.
I know. Well, now that we are done with the puns, let's get on to the Americans. The Americans out of Fortress Europe are a really interesting force. They are really basic, and we will foreshadow this entire conversation by saying that the lists in Fortress Europe are basic. They are meant to tide us over from mid-war to bring mid-war players into late war using the same models without having to buy new stuff. The new books that are coming out are going to have a whole lot more really cool stuff with a whole lot more really cool units. So these are basic for a reason, but even though they're basic, I think we have figured out the meta from this book. What do you think about that?
I think we have. There's a lot of really well-priced equipment for the Americans at this point.
Let's talk about some well-priced equipment. If you flip over to page 17 in Fortress Europe, the M4 Sherman Tank Company, they just hit right out the gate with an amazing vehicle. The M4 in mid-war was one of the most expensive Allied vehicles you could take. However, in late war, for the Americans, you're paying for 5 Shermans 18 points. That is an amazing steal at the 100 points system, and for 109 points for Flames this year, that's going to be a lot of Shermans on the table. They're hit on threes. Their armor's the same. They still have their stabilizers, their self-defense AA gun. Like, there's just nothing that these tanks can't do moderately well. So I think we're going to see a few of these at tournaments. You were talking earlier when we were talking before the show, Ian, that you had been tempted to take Shermans off the table or off the shelf.
So one of the things that I've got a small company of British Shermans that I've been looking at, as well as a platoon of American Shermans that I've been toying with over the past few years. And this is really proving to be my motivation to sort of get them back into the game, especially supporting the Brits that we'll talk about later on in the book. But 10 points for 3 Shermans, and as you said, Austin, these are the Swiss Army knife of late war. They were before in version 3, they were in mid-war, though they were very good for what you got. In late war, like, I don't think there's going to be an Allied player, unless you're Russians, that isn't going to bring a platoon of Shermans of some way, shape, or form to support their forces. Because for 10 points for 3, it's a good way to get AT-10 into your list, smoke, and a unit that can actually move along and attack infantry fortifications as well as tanks equally well. And the 50 cal has made its way in as well.
And that's what I was going to bring up. Like, the Sherman has that 50 cal. It's got the machine guns. It's got 5 shots of machine gun, and some of that's with a 5-up firepower. Mm-hmm. It's just an all-around good tank. One of the all-around not-so-good tanks that I think we're going to see with the Americans, if you flip the page, is the M5. I think Battlefront got a little bit of heat when they released mid-war that light tanks were just too good. So I hesitate to say they got the nerf bat, because I don't think they got nerfed. But I will say that you can bring less of them. They're a little bit more expensive. However, for the Americans, that M5 did go up to hit on 3s. So it's a little bit better, I suppose. However, it's not an amazing formation. You can only bring 3 platoons of them. They max out at 5 tanks apiece. It's just I don't see this being a competitive face smashing list anymore. Not that it's not a good list. It's just not going to be an auto win.
I think the day of seeing 64 Stuarts on the table in late war isn't going to happen. In mid-war, this was a possibility, as everyone knows, with Austin's great success using... How many Stuarts was it?
Well, it was 62, but it was a good list, and it did what it was supposed to do. However, in late war, there's just too much stuff that cannot handle, because there's still only AT-7. Like, it...
I think the power in the Stuart Company is going to be working with the M10 Company, which is on the next page, and using those two concurrently. It's not a tank company that can stand on its own like the M4 Company can.
That's correct, and that's the next. And I think that's really the last unit that the Americans that we're going to see not competitive. I don't want to use that word. That's such a horrible word. But the M10 is a good, because it's only 16 points. When I saw that, M10s were like a focal point for me in mid-war, and at 32 points for 4 of them, like, I had to build other lists around my M10s because I had to bring the M10s. And now you can bring M10s for half the points. We're definitely going to see M10s on the field. I would venture to say that we're going to see M10 companies, at least one at every single tournament you go to.
Yep.
For friendly games after this book comes out, I think you're going to see M10 formations, because, I mean, they're Shermans with a better gun, and they're 2 points cheaper. Granted, you only get 4 of them, not 5, but they're hit on 4s now. American M10s hit on 4s, so just all around a great tank to bring into your list to get that AT-12 to deal with Tigers. Because unfortunately for the Americans, AT-12 is the best AT we're going to get from Fortress Europe. An indigenous American platoon, which is a weakness to the list. I'm not gonna try to sugarcoat that one. It is a weakness to the list. However, it can be fixed with some allied support. But as Forrest Gump says, that's all I have to say about that.
Oh, for sure. And it's important to, as we talk about the Americans, and we're coming to the end of discussing the Americans, more toys are coming.
More toys are coming.
So, yeah, the D-Day books are coming out, and those are going to have a lot more toys, but that's for a separate day.
I was about to say, I think Mitch and them are actually working on that podcast right now.
I think you're right.
But the Germans. There are 2 rules for the Germans that I would like to bring to everyone's attention, because if you haven't already seen it, German infantry just became godlike. And not because they got better, they're not hit on 5s or anything ridiculous like that. Panzerfausts. Every other infantry force in the game, with version 4, I can now shoot at your bazooka. I can shoot at your Piat. and if you fail your mistaken target rule, you have to take a hit on those very special AT weapons. German infantry, not so much these days. With a Panzerfaust, every time they shoot, one team in the unit can shoot as a Panzerfaust. Or in an assault, I can't just kill your Panzerfaust. It just keeps on coming. Which, historically, I get that because it was a one-shot spammed weapon in the German army. But on the table, tactically, this is a huge meta shift for the Germans.
And as somebody who was very frustrated when my one Panzerfaust got shot out of a unit, and I was stuck with a unit that couldn't attack anything in close combat anymore or defend itself from tanks, I really, really enjoy this change. And it prevents, too, the platoons that in late war, anyone who's ever counted up the German infantry section from, let's say, Brigitte Remagen or Berlin, and you had to pay a premium for rifle MGs that have every stand armed with a Panzerfaust, and the tanks just wouldn't come anywhere close to you. This is a good change, too, because it means that your platoons are going to be a little bit more competitively priced. And if I could break down Fortress Europe into one phrase or one word rather, for the Germans, it is Panzerfaust. It's a big game changer.
It's almost like in mid-war when we were paying 2 points for the round. Everyone is AT3 or something like that. Now it's not everyone is the tank assault, but I can't just kill your Panzerfaust and as a tank player breathe a sigh of relief because the bazooka's dead, that Piat's dead, the Panzerfaust is dead. Now I'm going to be shitting bricks the entire time I'm swinging in an assault. So, that's a choice that you as a tank player are going to have to make now when assaulting German infantry. Is it worth losing a tank every turn of an assault? Because they are ridiculous. Panzerfaust, that AT into your side armor is just straight up. Oh, it's God. It is just such a good weapon, and the fact that they never go away is just is bonkers. So, Grenadier platoons, we're going to see them in tournaments. The other really interesting thing, rules-wise, bringing, and it's not really rules, but it kind of gaps rules to units. The salvo template for the Germans in late war with the Neb, it's really good. So, but enough of that. Let's talk about the meat and potatoes of a list that I am thinking about building, which is the PZ-34 company. We were talking earlier about how the best number of tanks that you can bring in a force to be competitive is 18 to 20. That's, I think, the sweet spot. And that was a number that Germans, up to now, really had a hard time fielding, even in version 3. You could do it, it was possible, but they were expensive and you couldn't bring much support. The PZ-34 Mixed Tank Company, you can get PZ-4s, 5 of them for 28 points, PZ-3s, 5 of them for 18 points. Now, the upgrades for your guns, for the PZ-4 company, you actually -1 per tank for going down to the PZ-3 gun. But for your PZ-3s, you can get that AT-11 gun for only 2 points per tank. So you can only get it on 2 of them, so you're going to have 2 tanks that are your Let's Kill tanks, and the other 2 that are also Let's Kill tanks, because AT-9 with heat is actually pretty good. But we're going to see German tanks with the medium tanks that are actually on the field. So, going to play Germans, that was one of the things that I, as a player, didn't want to bring them to tournaments, because I don't want to only play with 7 tanks on the field and a platoon of infantry. Like, that to me just is not a very fun game. But with Fortress Europe, these tank lists, even for the Germans, we're going to see them. And with tanks being that cheap, Tigers and Panthers, oh my, by themselves in a platoon as support options, I think are a really good idea. The companies themselves, to bring a Panther company, you're looking at 111 points for a fleshed out one, or 77 points for a very minimum Panther Company. So, but by themselves as a platoon option, 33 points for 3 Panthers isn't that bad. And Tigers by themselves, 48 points for 4 Tigers, or 3 Tigers for 36, isn't that bad.
Well, I think the big takeaway for me looking at the German tanks is that why take Panthers when you can, for just a point more per vehicle, take Tigers with significant boosts on your motivations for last stand and remount, which, given that you're likely going to be bailed as opposed to destroyed until we get to stuff later on in the book, I think having that extra side armor is going to be really important for doing things like assaulting and taking objectives, which, if you're running the 18, the 20 tanks, you are going to have to assault with something. And if you're taking the mixed Panzer Company, you can take that platoon of Tigers and use it to bolster your own forces, and to, most importantly with those tanks, deal with heavy tanks that you'll see on the board, because there's going to be a lot of them.
Oh yeah, I think we're definitely going to see, because they're moderately priced now. They're not outside of affordability, and if they're not outside of affordability, that means there is a tactical place to put them. And if you can bring them, if you can squeeze them in, they're still they're not a point sink. They're a point spend. If you spend the points and build stuff to support them, I think you're going to see that Tigers and Panthers could be the linchpins of a lot of lists, as like the win condition, as the whole list is here to support them and get them to the objective, or something like that.
And I think the way that you do that with the mixed Panzer Company, if you're going to take the Tigers as that second slot, is run Panzer IIIs instead of the Panzer IIIs and IVs. Because you're banking on those Tigers to carry the day.
That's a good point. I think the only other thing that I have for the Germans, that I think is interesting, that makes me want to play them, is the Grenadier platoon. 7 points for your infantry for 8 stands of infantry. That's not bad. But then the upgrade options that the Germans get are really good. So you get, to give them Panzerfaust, you have to pay 2 points. So, okay, 2 points, easy day, done. You add their SMG teams, 2 points, easy day, done. At least 1, maybe 2. Now, what's really neat is you have 2 other additional AT weapons that you can bring. You could bring an AT rifle, or, 2 Panzerschrecks. Now, there's a place for both, I think. The anti-tank rifle shoots 20 inches. It is not slow firing. It has rate of fire too, so if you're pinned, you're still going to get that one shot at a normal swing. Panzerschreck's got a better AT. It only shoots 8 inches, and it has slow firing. So I think that gives the German player a really interesting choice on, do I want a platoon that maybe can be a little bit more aggressive with that AT rifle, or do I want something that can, more guaranteed? I may not hit the tank, but if I hit the tank in an assault, I want to kill it.
Well, I think just as we discussed the M4 is the Swiss Army knife for the Americans and the Western Allies in general, I think the Swiss Army knife for the Germans is the Grenadier platoon. You said before that it costs 7 points, and it does, but in my head, it's going to cost 9 points, because there's no way, unless I'm strapped for points, that I'm not taking Panzerfausts with this platoon.
That's true. And, I mean, even at 9 points, that's a steal. 9 points for 8 teams, that's a really good thing. I might have to bring a Grenadier company to a tournament now just to see how it goes.
And if you're facing off against a lot of infantry, switching off to the Panzergrens, which are a little bit less versatile, but can still get the Panzerfausts with an MG team, they're on page 47. It's a great purchase, because for 2 points more, you're essentially getting that free extra 7 shots a turn.
That's true. That's true.
Which is really good if you're playing against, let's say, a Strelkovi player a lot, or your local meta has shifted hard infantry as opposed to hard tanks. But there's nothing saying you can't take a Grenadier platoon and then back it up with uh, HMGs and a Panzerfaust and a Panzerschreck and have a platoon that can do anything.
Hmm.
Which I think is a really good option for the Germans.
I think that's just a good option in general for infantry. You know, in a game that is more and more appearing to be shifting the paradigm towards tanks and armored play, to see such a strong infantry choice as a very point efficient option, I think that's a really good thing for this game.
And you said it before about the Panzerschreck only having an 8-inch range. You still have Stormtrooper, so that 8 inches just became 12 inches with a Blitz. And you could follow it up with a shoot and scoot to be back, let's say, in bulletproof cover or in concealing terrain. It's a bit of a risky play, but if you've got that one shot on the flank of, let's say, a Churchill, then it's worthwhile to make that play.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 2 points taking out 4 points. Oh, spoilers. Speaking of Churchills, there's really nothing interesting for the British. They've
They
got
are very, in that sense, they're very British.
in that sense. There's one unit we'll get to here in a second that I'm very excited about for the Brits. As a majority British player, I'm very excited for the one we'll talk about. But right now we're going to talk about the Sherman and the Churchill, because I think that this is going to be the single biggest formation that may pose a problem to people and events in version 4 late war. The Americans have stabilizers and they have Shermans, and we already said that they're really good tanks. Now imagine you lose stabilizers, but to be honest, in version 4, stabilizers is more of a curse than anything.
Yeah, unless you're rolling 6s like your last name is COVID.
That's true. They're still hit on 3s, which was one of the reasons I hated playing the Sherman in version 3, was they're all trained. All the Brit Shermans that were affordable were trained.
The Brit Shermans in late war in version 3 were a flavor army. I never did well with them. I never saw you do well with them.
They were too expensive to be a swarmable, and I say swarmable in quotations, army, and they were not good enough to be like your veteran, like, let's have a tank game. So all those problems have been solved in Fortress Europe. They are hit on 4 Shermans that are 17 points, 16 points. They're 4 points apiece for your Sherman. And in the platoon, you can upgrade one of them for 1 point, to be a Firefly, which has an AT of 14. So you're getting those Fireflies into the platoons, and you can bring 4 of them per formation.
And importantly, you still have protected ammo on that Firefly, and you know everyone is going to be shooting at it. So having that extra remount ability on it will really help with last stand checks.
I just think that this will be a no-brainer unit. Now, like I said, there's really not much amazing for this British book, but it's a good option. Whoa, we got some dogs there.
That's the tactics dogs that are probably barking at Fireflies again for the second day in a row. God bless them. They're not very smart, but they are very cute.
Well, at least they have that going for them. And by Fireflies, you were telling me about this earlier. It was butterflies, correct? Your dogs were losing their minds because of butterflies.
Oh, no, not butterflies, lightning bugs. That they're seeing outside.
Fireflies. Okay.
So literally small pinpricks of glowing light that my dogs are not used to, despite having been around fireflies before.
All right.
God bless him.
That makes more sense. Well, speaking of fireflies, and we talked about AT-14, the one unit that I am drooling over, that I cannot wait to bring to a tournament, just because I can now, the M10. The Brits have their own M10, and not only do they have their own M10, they have the M10 Charlie, which, oh my goodness, it's just so good. I'm looking at the book right now just to verify that it's real. AT-14 4 tanks that are hit on 4s. They've got it's just so good for 18 points. They are the martyr of late war, and that I don't have to bring an American support platoon, that it can now be an actual British, God Save the Queen platoon on the table. I'm so excited to see this enter the field. I was a little worried that we weren't going to see anything, but the fact that it's here, I'm just blown away.
Overall, the British section of Fortress Europe, if you play Brits, and it's going to be a long wait for us to get our Normandy book, the M10 Charlie and the Sherman Company and the Churchill Company make this an army that has staying power on the field and will over the course of the next year. AT-14, you've got a lot of access to it, a lot of good access to it, and you can run a single nation company with, let's say you're doing the Churchill Company,
with everything, and they can do everything.
Six tanks firing AT-14, and that's going to do a number on any sort of heavy tank list or any sort of tank list, and it's going to become a question of being able to protect those vehicles, which as British players we're all used to. So it's going to be the same meat and potatoes that we're used to in late war, and we've got it now at the start with AT-14, as opposed to later on getting AT-14 like we had with the version 3 Forces book.
So to say that Brits, keep calm and carry on, like, okay, I've resumed it. We're going to carry on. We've got to the Soviets. And I say Soviets, but we're starting off with a British tank because as affordable as the Churchill was, we're going to see Churchill lists. We're going to see Soviet Churchill lists. They're hit on 3s. It's the same dang tank. They're all AT-10, and it's bananas. They are 5 Churchills in a platoon for 16 points. This will be the single game-breaking tank in the game for Soviets. We're just going to see masses of infantry on ahead of objectives and Churchill tank companies going out to do battle with the enemy. Leave your KV-1s and 5s at home. Oh, wait, 5 KV-1s are only 20 points. So we're just going to see Soviet tank hordes of heavy tanks. Like that will be a major play for Soviets. They get the 85 millimeter. The Hero Tank Company is an interesting choice. I think it is definitely something that we're going to want to look into for you Soviet players. You're going to want to look at this company.
The T-34 Hero Tank Company is, in my mind, if you're running the amazing Churchill Squadron for the Soviets, which it's just flat out amazing, you're going to want the Hero Tank Company, because the 3+ tactics rating, coupled with the fact that you can get 85 millimeters with rate of fire 2, means the days of languishing and praying that you'd get veteran Soviet tanks is finally here. And for 16 points, you get 4 AT-12 shots with 2 AT-9 tanks to take hits. Like, it's bananas.
Yeah, Soviet tanks. I mean, and it just gets better for Soviet tanks with the Lee Company, with the Valentines. So again, we're seeing smaller platoons. The Valentines and stuff like that are maxed out at 7, but your Grants, there are still platoons of 10. The T-34, just the 76 millimeter T-34, you can get 10 of them, and they are moderately priced. 10 for 30 points, and you can upgrade some of them up to half with 85s. I don't know. I think this might be a tank that we see on the table too.
I think the T-34 finally has a good place in the Soviet repertoire. I know it's been a big complaint, at least that I've seen vocally online discussed, that it's better to take the Lend-Lease tanks as opposed to the domestically produced tanks. But I think the T-34 regular Tankovi Company does have a place. And it's being as aggressive as the Soviets have always been, but with that 85 millimeter is just a great buy.
Yeah, I think the thing we're seeing in late war is that there is no list that cannot by itself stand alone. So you're not going to have to worry about, well, can I take a Ghost Panzer Grenadier Company with the Iron Cross car? I don't think you're going to see that out of Fortress Europe. I
Mhm.
think you're going to see, well, I mean, you can as the Germans, but you're not going to see that for the Brits and Americans. You're not going to see as much. What can I take from another army to make this army work?
Mhm.
Because everyone has enough of their own stuff that it works,
Mhm.
um, which is a good
There's
thing.
there's a lot of self-sufficiency just in the companies themselves. The one company I don't think can stand very well on its own against stuff like heavy tanks that are going to be the norm is probably the Brett Motor Company, but the support is fantastic for it. And you're going to take it to get infantry with Shermans, so it's not that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, like this book is all about taking the heaviest things you can and the best stuff that you can to eliminate that.
Yep.
And there's no force in this book that does it better and more affordably than the Russians.
No, they really don't. And I mean, they also can now bring 85. The Su-85 now is in this book, so
Mm-hmm.
you have a dedicated. I mean, it's that. This is a point thing. 28 points for 5 of them. That's kind of getting on the high side of prices, but they are hit on 4s. Like overall, it's a great tank.
Well, the best part about the Su-85 is the skill of veteran,
Oh yeah,
and you've got a solid 5.5 for side and front, so
I mean,
you're gonna be okay.
they're just great tanks overall. They you
Mm-hmm.
now and for great tanks, I do. You should pay a premium for a great tank. The one great tank that the Soviets do get that, as a Romanian player, I love that they included. And what I'm interested to see, the OT-34 is now in late war. Um, I don't think it changed an awful lot from the mid-war version, apart from in points. While it's 30 points to bring 10 T-34s, it's only 25 points to bring 10 OT-34-85s. Now you're
Mm-hmm.
paying, you're getting those points back because you are getting a reluctant, reckless tank. So your remount on a 5, you're getting hit on 2s, and you have an overworked 76mm gun. But you
And
do get the flamethrower.
importantly, though, that flamethrower is overworked. So, as the person that has often been on the receiving end of Austin's OT-34-85s, uh, I'm very much in like excited for the fact that this tank seems appropriate in terms of points effectiveness. It still has a place.
Oh
It's
yes,
been
and it's still a strong unit. It's just
yeah.
not ridiculous.
It's not the 900-pound gorilla it was before. Now it's more like the
500
800
pound.
the 850-pound. It's leaner and meaner, and it's just a little bit more aggressive. And that's okay because I'm just going to take as many fireflies as I can and go from there. Uh, but no, I'm really really enthralled with how they've done the Soviet book because it's just the Soviet section. It's fantastic.
So I think my big takeaway for late war events, and I know they're coming up, and people are already looking at what they're going to do. Americans, don't dig too deep into the American section of Fortress Europe because you're not going to take Fortress Europe list to tournaments. You're going to take the Normandy book. Um, for everyone else, Germans, if if the American book is anything to say how great the German book is going to be, it's just a good day to be a German player in this game.
Mm-hmm.
For the Brits and the Soviets, we've got a little bit to wait, but we're not going to be at a disadvantage. You're still going to see British lists winning first place. You're still going to see Soviet lists winning first place. Your lists are not too simple. They're still complicated. Not complicated, but there's you're going to have to think about your lists, which is a good thing. I like that
Mm-hmm.
it's helping us. Um,
Think of it from this perspective. If you are a Soviet player or a British player and that's all you do because you love those factions and how they play, or any of the minor variations of them, this book is strong enough to where it will be competitive playing against your friends' D-Day German book or D-Day American book over the next couple of months. And once you get that shot in the arm that's going to be the new releases that are dedicated specifically for these factions, you're going to be miles ahead of where the American players and the American players and the German players are going to be in the next couple of months. Because
I
those
would agree.
tactics are going to be tuned in, ready to go, and ready to rock and roll.
And once you get your tactics down, then you put the supplies behind it, and you're going to be gold. I'm just trying to think of the word that I'm looking for here. Combined arms is going to be a strong tactical choice for the late war version now. I played tank only lists. I've played infantry only lists in mid-war version 4, and they do very well because you can overload the system of the game, which some people may or may not like that, but you play by the rules and you can make really amazing lists. These lists that they're giving us, I think, are going to be more powerful by playing that combined arms approach. Like, I need a little bit of AT-14 to deal with those tigers. Because now tigers, you're going to see them at tournaments. It's not like he brought a tiger. There's 2/3 of his list. Charge. That's not gonna. You just can't do that in late war.
The way the points have been reduced have specifically for tigers and heavy tanks and high AT weapons, and it's not significant, but it's enough to where, like you were saying, Austin, it's important to have combined arms now more than ever for anybody playing late war.
And it's not.
If you don't, you're gonna get rolled over.
Yeah, you're gonna get rolled over, and it's not just only the Germans have heavy armor that they can't afford. This goes for every faction. Every faction has to think about, how am I going to deal with Panzerfaust infantry? How am I going to deal with infantry that the Brits bringing 8 6-pounders? How am I going to deal with self-propelled guns? The Soviet tanks? You're going to see all of these lists, and all of these lists have equal amounts of awesomeness to them, to where just bringing 62 Stuarts on the field just isn't going to be good enough. You might be able to overrun infantry formation, but that's it. You're a one pump chump at that time. So, if anything, this book should be called Combined Arms Europe. I don't know. That was a lame attempt at a joke, but I think that speaks for it. I think that's how this book is going to play out at events.
The old adage in version 3 that I know What Would Patton Do would always talk about is make a good stew. And if version 4 mid-war was, you could have the steak and the baked potato as a meal in and of itself, now it's time to break out the pots, because what's going to make or break your victory at tournaments or at the club on the weekend is going to be having a little bit of everything and being able to be flexible in your responses. Because there's going to be Churchills, there's going to be Tigers, there's going to be Panthers, and if there was a tank called a Bear that had front armor 8, it would be in the game at this point. So there's going to be as much stuff as possible that's going to have high front armor, high side armor, and you're going to need to have everything to deal with it. And not only are there going to be those tanks, but there's going to be platoons of infantry too holding onto objectives. So having artillery again is important, and all these other things. So it's time to get back to making stews instead of steaks.
I mean, as much as I love steak, I do love stew even more. So that, I think, is going to do it for us today. We kind of went over how we see the Fortress Europe changing for each nation. We didn't want to leave anyone hanging out. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, just be sure to put it in the chat below. We'll get around to it. Now that we have a more solid release schedule, we do apologize. Life did just kind of kick myself and Ed in the chest solidly. I got put on a watch rotation that shift work, which is just the worst. And if no one else knows, Ed is in the middle of a pregnancy with him and his wife. So life has just been lovely to us for the past few weeks. But we're back. Mr. Birdwell is coming on to help us talk about tactics. So we're back. And speaking of tournaments, there are tournaments coming up. On the No Dice No Glory forum site, there are a few tournaments that are upcoming here on the East Coast. The big one coming up, Historicon. Battlefront is putting on a Team Yankee tournament, Team Yankee Nationals, as well as a mid-war Flames of War tournament. In addition to that, in the middle of that is the Flames of War doubles put on by Kurt Reese. So 3 tournaments upcoming for you to dig your teeth into if you're on the East Coast. All 3 of these tournaments generally are amazing. I've been to them for the past 3 years now. So you will definitely see me there for mid-war. I am, of course, bringing my M10s with some Stuart support and infantry with them. For Team Yankee, I'm bringing Iranians. I want to see how they work out. I think they're going to do great. But prove me wrong. We'll see you all at Cold Wars. Ian, thanks for signing on with us today. I hope to see you again on the next one.
All right. Thanks for having me.
And we'll send it back to the studio with Sean. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you all next time.
Thanks so much for joining the show tonight. Remember to follow us on Twitter at No Dice, No Glory, and keep the conversation going on NoDiceNoGlory.com, now featuring our own message boards. Have a great night, everybody.